from your campus, what are the students' perception of AI in your campus from your purview, right? And so I realize that may be different because we have multiple people here at LAPU. That one person's perspective may be different than somebody else's, even within the same institution. So, but are students enthusiastic? Are they skeptical? All over the place? Neutral? Yeah, I'd love to open it up though.
I'll share from our perspective. Sorry, Scott. Do you want to
That's
go?
okay. I didn't know if we were still doing introductions or if we were done with
Yeah,
that.
I was going to introduce myself and answer the question,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm Mike Wilday. I'm the manager of Learning Technology Solutions at Los Angeles Pacific University, responsible for our AI course assistant integration in all of our courses, and just helping with our team, the digital learning solutions team, to integrate AI and how we're doing that within our courses. So I think from my standpoint, what I've seen and as far as feedback from the students who've used our AI assistants is they're excited. The majority have really potential seen some potential value, and as we've set up our assistants, they seem to really feel like they're answering the questions that they have, which is really cool. And so it just kind of increases their confidence as they address the professor or address the assignment requirements. It's really been a boost for them. So I feel like the majority of ours, I think there's still probably a majority that is still skeptical, but they like the potential.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and Scott, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
That's
to cut
okay.
off the introductions. I just
Oh,
wanted to
no.
make sure that people were aware of kind of, the general way of going about things here. But yeah, please introduce yourself. Would good love to get to know you.
Yeah, hi. First time joining you all. My name is Scott Macklin. I'm the new Associate Vice President of Trinity Western Online, TW Online, which is a strategic and emergent initiative to actually try to get Trinity Western has been offering various online programs here and there, but in a more concerted way. We had John Reynolds come and spend some time with us looking at Los Angeles Pacific University. We've had conversation with George on getting us connected with Nectar. I think the big questions that I'm dealing with as we try to move and cater to working professionals who are looking to retool, reimagine, and re-engage their career. They have a very much a transactional approach to what am I going to get out of this program and how is it going to get me to where I need to go. And if AI is a tool to help me to get me to where I go, then sign me up. And we're trying to layer in, well, what does it mean to be a reflective learner, authentically responsible, owning your learning as we try to move to some definition of a competency-based program. So therefore, how do we design learning assignments, learning activities that allow AI to help coach
Mm.
or mentor students how to become more reflective, but at the same time demonstrating this is what I can bring to the table and why you should hire me.
Wow. Well, great to meet you, Scott. That's awesome too. Those are some challenging topics to wrestle with. I mean, I'm excited to kind of dig into that. George, I see you chomping at the bit.
Yeah, because I just had a really neat conversation with Kathy Chill from Nectar, and she was talking about some things that they were doing at UNLV and that we're doing at LAPU as well. But digital fluency, digital whatever you want to call it, that's 2020. It's all about AI literacy now. So digital literacy is surpassed. That's not even a bar anymore. That's the ground we're jumping from, and AI literacy is now the bar. And by us giving them the skills, the AI skills, and this is a conversation I was having with Kathy, we're actually making a difference on how people can become employed uh, directly by what they can talk to within their not I almost said resumes, but yeah, resume, but when they're being interviewed for positions, they can directly talk to their specific experience. When we as higher ed folks let them get their hands in there and build stuff and work with AI. So I love that thought, Scott, about how do we show them that it's valuable and how does it help them get employment. And I think really that we have to honk that horn really loudly. We need a trunk horn or an air horn to talk about AI literacy.
Is
Yeah.
that-
Yeah, because some like what I saw with Kathy was actually building AI assist. The students build assistants for different assignment criteria. So like Mary Beth, you're in the health sciences world.
Hmm. Yeah.
We need an assistance for some problem that's been happening there. That's just well, that's my mind's going 100 miles an hour, so I'll just kind of be quiet and absorb a little bit. But I think it's
Um, yeah, we have in our, I do have a course, an introduction course in integrative health. And I ask my students, so that's where we start the conversation, like, how's this going to impact your career? And just to give some context, a lot of my students are coming into non-conventional medicine, like they're choosing nutrition and health and wellness coaching, things that are not, and they want to be patient-centered, like being with the patient. So they don't initially think there's any impact on them around the impact of AI because they said, well, it's all about me being with the patient, right? But I think when we start opening a conversation about how we can actually help them with, marketing their business or engaging with record keeping or documenting their encounters, suddenly that opens space up for them to be with their patients. And so it's great opportunity. They start in my course with this resistance, like, oh, I'm never going to use it. It's not relevant to me, to a place where they start saying, oh, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This could be really helpful for me, both in my career, but also in my learning. And so, yeah,
cool.
it's a growing, it's trying to get our faculty to begin their literacy is where we're really at. I think our students are getting further ahead than our faculty right now.
Well, is that faculty? What did you call? I wrote it down because I thought it was kind of brilliant.
We have an AI
Faculty
faculty
club.
journal, like a club, yeah. Just
How's that working?
it's same old people come, right? So we don't
Okay.
reach everybody. They're all invited. We keep them in the loop. I actually host it twice a month just to capture different times and different groups, but still it's the same people. But we've had some good conversations. I share a bit of what I learned is new. We have some conversations about the challenges they're facing with various different topics around the ethics around it or bias with some of the different LMSs. And so, yeah, it's been good. Good.
I love I want to go back to something that Scott mentioned because it was the big question is we're trying to engage with folks in the career, students who want practically to understand how is this, AI, how is this going to get me where I want to go? And I'm not on the classroom side of things, I'm the back office side of things. But I will say I'm responsible for hiring or sitting on the panel on hiring other employees. And one of the areas that we're constantly looking at is what tools have you used, whether that's in your class, in your classroom, what tools have you used? I don't care if it's in grade school, but those tools that consumers or employees are using just in their daily lives, that's becoming more and more important to me as a technologist because it's not, did you get a boot camp and learn that thing, but do you practically know how to use it? Do you understand the value of that tool? Can you incorporate it into complex situations or simple situations? Can you explain the tool to somebody? And I've found a lot of times that folks were just, classically maybe trained on certain technologies. They didn't have that same level of competency as those that have directly interacted with it. And so I think that's why at LAPU we've pushed so hard to get these tools in our students' hands because we do believe, as we're seeing as part of our back office and organization, AI is becoming part, it's integrated into our expectations of our employees now, them understanding how to use these tools, turning on features on tools that they're already using that are, using AI mechanisms. If they don't understand AI, then they'll lose that value proposition on behalf of our organization. So I think for our students, going back to students, I think it's really critical that they do understand that the technology is going to be there at their next job. They need to practice these skills, and AI, the classroom's the perfect place to do it. So that's my take as an IT director, but I'm not by any means on the instructional design side of things. So
You know what I love to do is active learning helps students utilize what they learned in more creative and effective ways to solve complex issues, right? And so the AI tools that we use, not just the assistant, but we use them for think, pair, shares, holding conversations, doing all sorts of active learning stuff. Um, I think it helps better prepare them for when they're seeking the job, when they're trying to solve difficult problems. So it's giving them a step up by giving them active learning opportunities within the classroom that they can then go apply much better than they used to. The AI assistants are great, but now that's the baseline. So we had to kick it up a notch to active learning.
George, I want to follow up, and I think I agree with the comment that was made that digital literacy, early 2000s AI literacy, but we know that digital and information fluencies, information literacy, many moons to come up with some frames of what one would be considered either competent or literate.
Mm.
AI, we're in the wild, wild west, and maybe it's the wild, 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 wild west. So, as we think about those things we want to look at, so I'm going to ask Daniel a specific question. When you're, because you said you bring this into your hiring practice, what question do you ask? What type of demonstration do you look for? Or do you give your candidates actually a problem to solve in your interview process? I'm just wondering how you actually frame that in your in how you seek potential candidates.
So as of right now, I mean, we have our org is only 150 full-time employees, so we're not hiring all day, every day, right? And in my group, we hire maybe once a year, hopefully less than that, as long as our folks are, persistent. And so right now, when I've been sitting in on other departments' panels to kind of look at candidates through the lens of technology and make sure that, as we hire remote employees, that they're not on an island, that we feel like they're equipped to be sustaining. One of the areas that we'll ask is, yeah, just what level of engagement have you had with AI tools? Have you played around with ChatGPT? And just by asking, have you played with it, often opens the door for them to go, oh, actually, yeah, I use it in my recipes, or oh, I heard about it. And you can quickly determine those that are very excited about this and versus those that are, terrified that they heard it from a cousin, and they're like, oh, I've heard about that from my cousin, but I've never touched it, And so it's not necessarily a qualifier for us. It's more about unknowing, okay, where's this person coming into into our org with and what's their level of understanding.
We wrote it in as a qualifier for DLS now.
Oh, and that makes sense, right? For a more digital focused role, that makes sense. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like your comment, Mary Beth. I want to ask you, at Trinity Western, what we're experiencing with our faculty is the conversation still seems to be just circling around how do I AI proof the same thing that I've always been doing? How do I make sure that this is authentically a student doing work, but I haven't actually changed what I'm asking them to do?
Yeah.
So, how much of the conversation is still in that realm, and how much is it shifting to, "Ooh, what if you did this or that?"
So I think there's different groups in our university. There's some of us who are more on the transparency side. We're trying to get students to be transparent. They're using it so that we can teach them AI literacy. So we can give them those pointers, say, okay, yeah, so you got this, you used AI. It kind of gave you a very biased answer. How might you adjust your prompt? So we can use those opportunities to develop their AI literacy. But then there are those still. We still have faculty who are still saying, how do I, prevent them from using it? How do I tell if they're using it? And it's like some of us are just saying we're not even in the game of trying to decide whether or not you're using it. We're in the game of trying to decide how can you use it? How can you apply your critical thinking? How can you support your own learning in the process? We're higher education. We're not teaching, literature. So there's some benefits for us. We're like a little bit like you going towards their career, going to apply it to a future career where they're going to need those skills. So it's like definitely can see where there'd be different philosophies and different K through 12 versus higher ed versus undergrad. But yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Amy here, by the way. I'm actually currently a student in LAPU's MS-IDT program, and I have worked in the K through 12 space for about 10 years. And that's one of the biggest things that we're running into in the K through 12 space is students. I've had students try to Google search something and they're actually coming up with information that's outdated, right? And AI is I tell them it's only as good as the source that you're pulling from. And especially when you're combining AI with Google algorithms, which bring you the most popular, not necessarily the most relevant things to the top of your list, it's really affecting students' ability to discern the difference between what is good information and what isn't good information.
Yeah, I love that. Amy, you weren't here for the last conversation, but Mike Trong mentioned something. I actually wrote it down, Mike. You may not remember saying this, but religion makes good people better and bad people worse. AI does this as well. And then he underscored that with, we got to be careful about giving unfettered AI tools to freshmen. And this is in the context of college. But I can't imagine how much harder it is with, K through 12. I have four kids. They're all, range from fifth grade through high school. And one of the things I'm constantly impressed is their ability to recognize AI faster than me. It's in commercials, advertising, on websites. They'll be like, "Oh, how lazy is that company? I can't believe they did that." So it's funny. It's one of those things where I actually do believe in some cases my kids might be more I don't know, trained is not the right word, but more aware of AI and the usage of AI today than some of the teachers in some cases. So it's a very interesting place to be. I I'm so grateful I'm not in the K-12 to grapple that complex question, but from those of you that might have come from that space or are willing to speak into that, I'd be interested to hear what you think about Amy's question or thought.
I'll say something, and hopefully I'll say something so interesting that Daniel will remember the next time. Mike Trong here. I'm based in Los Angeles, but I am with Indiana Wesleyan University, so Midwest school, but I'm based here in Los Angeles. Um, I recently, I'll put it in the link here. I recently read a blog post by David Wiley. I don't know if that name rings a bell or not. He's like kind of like the father, one of the big promoters of OER, Open Education Resource, and he's been doing it for a long time. And he's also now writing like, almost exclusively about AI. And I find his writing to be super relevant to today's education. And then he focuses on usually the higher ed, but he does talk about education in general. The thing I just put in the post in the chat is he talks about this idea of the musician's rule. And basically, I'll try to see if I can summarize it without butchering it. You can read the article to get the actual scoop. He says in the beginning, he says a person with no musical training is given $1 million Stradivarius violin and asked to play it. And then you have a person who, with a graduate degree in violin performance and decades of experience playing in recitals and concerts, is given a $30 middle school orchestra rental violin and asked to play it. Which music will you enjoy more? And if you think about it, like, that really kind of it frames really well what this AI does. I mean, the AI could be the biggest token, whatever, like trained on and all that, but if the person who's using it can't even distinguish truth from non-truth, it does not matter how powerful this tool is. It just
Mhm.
like it's sort of like this musician's role. Like you can give this graduate the person with a graduate degree in violin and lots of experience, and you can give them something whatever off the street. They can play a music like a beautiful music, and then you have this person who no experience, and you give them $1 million thing, and they can put two notes together, kind of thing. So I think his framing, I think when I read it, I mean, he wrote this back in June, so last year, and so it's been half a year ago, and it's been really sticking with me. Like, what is now, how do we apply the musician's rule to what we're doing in education and AI? I mean, AI at the end of the day is a very powerful, like, it's $1 million Stradivarius that we're putting into the hands of our students. And the question is, are the students going to play something nice? Or if you read through this blog, he has a link to the first one is a beautiful, like one guy just creates this amazing 30-second kind of, and then there was a link to this, what was it? It was a group of people, Portsmouth's Sinfonia, players who either people without, they don't have musical training, or they don't even know how to play an instrument. And you can see the result. Like you can play one and you can play the other, and you're like, oh, this is bad. And in many ways, I think if we kind of use that musician's role, it can help sort through a lot of the challenges that we're facing right now in education. Because it makes everything clear for me because it's like it's at the end of the day, the AI is the AI, and it's like this $1 million tool that we're giving to the hands of students. And if they still don't know how to do the basics, it doesn't matter. Like they won't know how to use it and can't put two notes together and all that. And so we at the end of the day, as educators, have to still focus on the basics. The reading, the writing, the math. I mean, all the fundamentals of education that we've been talking for hundreds of years, we still have to keep doing because that is still fundamental knowledge. And until they get that, it doesn't matter how powerful the tool is. So anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for sharing that article. The notion that how do we think about the affordances and constraints of AI as being able to open up our human ingenuity, but that human ingenuity is still human, right? So I'm in a family band with my two best friends and our children. So we
That's
ran
cool.
an experiment. We're working on our third album. We ran an experiment of developing songs with AI just to play around with it. And we had one song where the AI generated not only the lyric but the music based on a set of prompts, and it gave 12 different versions, and one of the versions was picked. And then the idea was we were going to learn the AI version, then re-record it organically as a band. So it was a fun process until we got to the point where we found it was physically, humanly impossible to sing the song the way that the AI did it because AI does not have to breathe,
Ah,
right? Humans had to
oh,
breathe, so there was no breaths. So, to do so it was an interesting challenge. So what it did, it forced us to rethink and to rewrite the stanzas and actually, and we actually came up with sort of a hybrid version of a particular song, which we'll give AI credit in the credits of it. So it was a but it was a very valuable learning chance to play. So I want to ask the question. I love what Daniel, you put in a chat GPT summary of the article. And the summary says educators are trained in effective teaching methods, but it does not say what are effective teaching methods, right? So it's a good general frame. I'm wondering from where everyone sits here, do you have at least an example of an effective teaching method in this particular context for the purposes of sharing?
Hey, think pair share with the AI is great, where you're given a prompt to think about, a couple questions to discuss, then you pair up with the assistant, you have a conversation, then you attach the transcript of your conversation into a discussion form and share out what you've learned, and then have a discussion amongst other people. That's one way. And then we're just finishing up an assignment where it's a history assignment where a person is facilitating a conversation between MLK Jr. and Malcolm X about their approaches to the civil
my
rights
gosh,
movement.
that's fascinating.
Yeah, so and that helps. And the reason why I love the critical thinking piece is because you have to preface that to our students to, okay, now you have to use your critical thinking. Is this true? And then we force them to go in and Brant, our SME and instructor has a thing throughout the entire course for 25 extra points, extra credit points, if you can find something that's wrong within what they're doing. So teasing out that critical thinking with AI is to me simpler than teasing out critical thinking without it.
Some teachers, oh, I'm Yvonne Ho. I teach at LAPU and Fortress College. And boy, the difference between the two schools couldn't be more. It's like day and night. What you were talking about earlier. I'll get to that in a second. And I teach ChatGPT to my students at the other school. And when I first introduced ChatGPT to the students, they were so amazed. They thought that AI was like magic. Now, 10 semesters later, it's like old hat, and people are using it everywhere, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. And so now, instead of just being the magician who shows the students the magic tool, now I'm just teaching them the ethical way to use that
Mm.
magic tool so that they don't, for instance, use AI for sources because AI still hallucinates sometimes. I once tested AI for the sources, and so AI gave me 5 sources, and then I asked different AI, "Do these sources exist?" And 4 out of 5 did exist, but the fifth one was missing. And then the other AI said, "Oh, I guess the other AI must have hallucinated the fifth one. It was trying to guess because it couldn't find the fifth that fifth that fifth reference." So I find that it used to be when AI first came out, it hallucinated a lot more. Now it's hallucinating more like 4 out of 5. But all it takes is just one, that to get you in trouble. So I tell students, if they're going to use AI, they still have to do it, find their sources the old-fashioned way by going to the library. And oh, by the way, I teach English at both schools. And then I'll just, for 1 minute, I'm going to say, in one school, it's just like what Scott said, where you have faculty saying, "Oh, I'm so against it. What? We're going to use AI?" Then you've got other faculty who are early adopters like me, and then we're all for it. So it's kind of like two camps, okay? And then my other school is still grappling with, how do I come up with an AI policy? They're still working on that. And then they ask faculty like me, they would go, "Yvonne, you're an AI expert. How could we do an AI policy? What do you know?" That kind of stuff. So they're still working on that. Meanwhile, the boss has recently learned how to use AI in order to, all the student comments, and then you use AI to do a data analysis of whether those comments are positive or negative, similar to a sentiment analysis of what the tone of the students are. And then for us faculty, instead of getting a whole slew of student comments, we now get an AI generated summary of what and then she's quite proud of herself. She goes, "And I used AI to do that." That's the way she said it. So at my other school, it's more individual. Like one individual is using it one way, another teacher's doing it this way. It's piecemeal. That's what I'm saying. There's no uniform policy. But the problem with that is students get confused because you have one teacher who's all for it. Then the next teacher says, if you use AI, it's cheating, you get a 0. That causes a lot of confusion. And therefore, there needs to be a uniform AI policy so that students across the board know what to do. So that's the two different, you guys, LAPU just jumped right in and did it. Both schools started at the same point when November 2022, when ChatGPT first came out. Everybody was, "What's this?" But I find that of the two schools, LAPU jumped, whoa, and my other school is still at the beginning.
Hey, Yvonne, when you talk about starting with that ethical framework, where where do you point towards in terms of an AI ethical framework? Is there such a thing yet? Or are you just talking ethics generally?
Well, I based my ethics I based my ethics on what LAPU had their initial policy, and
Right.
that's using AI for this is for a writing class, using AI for idea generation and essay
Mhm.
revision, but not have AI write the story or do the assignment or write the essay for you. And when I have the writing process, it's very convenient because you have the writing process, pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. So
Right.
I'll tell them you can use it for pre-writing, AI for pre-writing. You can use it for rewriting, but not the middle one. Rewriting, I mean writing, which is when you actually write the essay. So
Yeah.
and you've got to find your own sources. That
Yeah.
pretty much sums up for a writing teacher um, AI ethics in a
I
nutshell.
like that. I think it goes back to George's comment. It's like when we used to teach math, show your work.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that there's such a contrast too between the two populations, Yvonne, that you're saying that, some faculty that
Oh,
are,
Amy.
all on board, and then there's those faculty that are really apprehensive. I'm curious from your perspective, Yvonne, have you seen somebody go from one camp to the other, right? In either way.
In either way, no.
Yeah.
Everyone's entrenched in their own camp. My
Oh.
boss is trying to get everybody on board the AI train
Mhm.
because she is once she started playing with it, she loved it. That was her experience with it. So she's trying to get everybody on board. So in a way, we're kind of mimicking what LAPU was doing. What was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Well, 2022, however many years that was, because we're in 2020. I still think we're in 2024. But yeah, they're still at the very beginning.
So one of the things that we did first as an organization around AI, one of the very first steps we took formally is we actually defined an internal policy on AI first.
Yeah.
The reason that we started with that step first is we felt if there was a framework that our staff could work within, then they wouldn't be so afraid to try new things as long as they knew that they were within the framework of the policy, right? And so I went and looked at it. We haven't updated it in a couple of years. We actually wrote it, I think we wrote it a year and a half ago. And so, but to Scott's point, we don't necessarily point to a ethical standards list. I don't know that there's one that exists for AI yet that we can all agree is a good one. So we're a Christian organization, and so we're actually anchor back to our ethical and Christian standards, and so that's what we reference in our policy, Scott. And so I don't know that there is a AI Bible out there quite yet. No pun
Not yet.
intended, but
Not yet.
you
Yeah.
know, and maybe we could write one. Yeah. So, but Yvonne, I think it's so interesting because we see that on the staff side of things too. We have those that are, and because that's my perspective, is not necessarily students, but the folks that support our students. We have those like Craig, Mike, that are on this call, that are part of our staff that have embraced it, they run with it, and they are going places further than an IT person could ever go because they're moving forward in their domain. And so we're fortunate to have the kind of that representation. I think in most of our departments, there's at least somebody who's championing AI for their group. But I would say, if there's organizations that are struggling to get like having that rough start, we found that actually developing the internal organizational policy that immediately lifted all sorts of red tape for a lot of people, for those that were interested in moving forward, to start moving forward. And then everybody else got to see the benefits. Oh, wow. We saw that here. George ran with it and all of a sudden started writing academic papers on how, the our AI tools were actually transforming our students' progress and their outcomes. And so anyways, I think that you got to start somewhere and invite those people. Maybe we need some naysayers on here too, in the conversation. It would enrich the conversation to hear the other side of the fence
You mean
for sure.
I can invite my boss
Absolutely.
from my
Yes.
school?
We'd love that.
She's like, what are you doing at your other school? How can you help me?
Yeah.
She sounds lost.
And we would George and I would love to talk to her too about how we got started here, both on the back office and then on the student side. So feel free to
Okay,
connect us, but
okay.
also invite her to the conversation. It would be great, him or her to the conversation. So
Oh yeah, okay. She
um,
does like to talk. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Good, good. Um, there was a question there, or there was a thought that Scott mentioned earlier. I wanted to revisit because um, let's see here. Oh, I lost my note. Sorry. I'll come back to that one. Another one was about somebody had mentioned including the AI questions in interviews. Something that we are working with actively right now is we are connecting with our career services department to identify areas where students are using tools that are valued in the workplace. So, for example, if we encourage students to use Google Chat or Google Workspace and Gmail, those are things that we want in our career services to make sure that as we're guiding students through building their resume, that they're not excluding those actual hard skills that they've learned through the course of coming to our university. Because the value is not always just in the degree. It's all of us know that, right? It's the process in which you go through and the people that you meet. And in this case, for a resume, the tools that you use to accomplish your degree. So, being able to put on there that you're skilled at prompt engineering and advanced AI topics and how to use them ethically in a classroom. That looks a lot better than just seeing, a list chat GPT as my list of skilled, tools. And so that's something actively that we're working on right now is trying to identify what are those high sought after tools that we are already are empowering our students with, and then how can we equip our career services to make sure that our alumni are actively using that as they're seeking out new opportunities. um, so it just takes, I think, going across the bridge, having people move from department to department and connecting and making sure that we're all working together. But that's one of the creative ways that we at LAPU are trying to practically utilize the tools that we're pushing in the classroom and actually have them add value to our students beyond just the outcome of their class. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are doing something similar, but how about AI driven personalization in teaching and student learning? This is where, I think a lot of our heads are at in terms of educating in AI is that as we're seeing it develop, there will be a time when we can get to more AI driven, personalized learning. Um, and I'm curious if anybody is seeing anybody, are you playing around with it theoretically, practically? Are you watching others inside of education sector outside that are doing this?
Yeah, I mean, Amy here in the K through 12 space, I'm actually seeing a lot of use of this in like IXL, if you've heard of IXL, places like that, where the AI is actually evaluating the students' abilities in math specifically, and then challenging them with more complex math problems. So it's really individualized student learning with math specifically,
Mm,
where the AI is, again, like I said, assessing the student, how they're doing at their current topic, and then giving them more challenging topics, whereas their classmate may not be doing as well. And so their classmate isn't at the same spot in IXL as they are.
that's interesting. And is IXL just a supplemental learning tool, or is it incorporated into their grade? And
Yeah,
I'm curious.
it depends on the teacher. So IXL is actually like a program. It's a whole lot of stuff. That's the website's name. I don't know what their exact AI tool is. I know that if you're a subscriber and you go to their math section and you do that, that's what their math is doing. Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
You.
And I'm sorry, what I forgot what your question was. I forgot what I was saying. Somebody just walked by
Just
me.
curious if is it just used as a supplemental learning tool, or has it
Yes.
actually made its way into the grading process and being part of their grade and such?
It is a supplemental learning tool at the moment for most teachers. However, if a student does not engage with IXL lessons, oftentimes their grade is hindered by that. So if a student chooses not to use IXL, that is part of their homework. So their homework grade does suffer. There has been a correlation between using not just IXL, but other programs like it, and an increase in retention and an increase in uh, understanding of topics too.
Fascinating.
Amy, can I ask you to elaborate a little more? So, can you kind of walk us through like a typical class, like how is the IXL incorporated into the lesson plan or like, yeah.
Absolutely. So it varies from teacher to teacher and school to school right now. Where I'm at. So I am running after school programs in the Pomona Unified School District in Pomona, California. So in a very urban city, high student population, very high student to teacher ratio. Some teachers will often set aside class time and tell students, I want you to log into IXL. You need to do IXL for X amount of minutes. And then if they don't finish doing IXL for that amount of minutes, then they have to continue that at home. In other spaces, teachers are giving IXL as the homework assignment for so many minutes. Usually it's assigned in an amount of minutes using the app as either homework or classwork.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah. It's almost like when you say that, when you're describing that, it's almost like how Khan Academy is used before. Like you either do it, you
Yes,
watch it during class, or you do it at home, and yeah.
yes, exactly. Exactly like that.
I'm imagining the Duolingo is always the example that I use, right? I'd love to see Duolingo in a college setting. I would have benefited from that personally. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry, Yvonne, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, it sounds like they use IXL the way we would say, do 10 minutes of your math workbook on page 55.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. And then you go in there, but then, Bobby and Sally aren't necessarily at the same question, right? It's generating, what I'm hearing is it's generating questions based off of where it believes that they're at in terms of their understanding of the material, which I believe personally is something that we're, on the cusp of in terms of a higher education as well. Um, I don't know, how all the mechanisms inside the classroom because it's just not an area that I work in, but it's very clear, at least from my purview from IT, the technology is already there, and we're seeing it happen outside of higher ed. I mean, it's clearly in K through 12. Duolingo has been doing it for a decade. Amazon's doing it now as they onboard new developers, and so it's baked into some of their onboarding. And I know some of the Google certificates are getting revamped as well to include that AI, kind of understanding where you're at, and then pushing you based off of where you're at. So it's very clear that these tertiary areas are getting impacted by the personalized learning. So to me, it's just a matter of time until this gets pushed into higher ed.
I'm always challenged by the finite nature of higher ed. Like you've got 14 weeks
Mm,
and already students are, you've got a certain achievement of a number of credit hours you need to invest in to get those credits. And so some need to work harder and longer than others. And that's been that personalized learning. There's a little pushback from the students about, hey, why am I spending 3 times the amount of time to learn this when they should
mm.
be, right? But so they don't have that. They're adult learners. They're working sometimes 2 jobs. And we're asking them in that self-paced, personalized learning that they're going to have to invest a little bit more time, some will than others. And so, like, how do we navigate that space of expectation for students as they're navigating this personalized learning kind of model? And where, sometimes it means they're going to have to spend a little bit more time than another student to learn it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a reframing of expectation
Yeah.
a little bit.
And just piggyback off of that, Mary Beth. I mean, what you just described is a perfect rationale and motivation for doing competency-based education. CBE and AI is like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
It just goes together. And so our at IWU, we have we have what 2 or 3 CBE programs, and we are double downing on that. Like we are gonna have probably 5 new CBE programs in 2025, and we're gonna probably double that next year. So, because of exactly what you just described, that different students work at different pace, and AI is where it can adjust accordingly. And so those things, yeah, I just wanted to
We need a
tag it.
little bit different
Yeah.
payment model too, though. Are we paying by the credit, or are we paying, like, how is that going to
Y-
kind
y-
of
Yeah.
shift as we
Yeah.
move towards this kind of model?
Yeah, like Western Governor does a subscription, like kind of like you pay Netflix, like it's
Yeah.
every 6 months you pay $7,500 or something at Western Governor, and you can take as much as you want in that 6 months, and
Yeah.
you do it, and as long as you're paying your subscription fee, you can just, it's like a buffet. So
And that's a different
yes,
model. I love that idea. Right now, like, I'm still in the traditional model of, you pay for a certain number of credits, and that certain number of credits have to be completed within the 14 weeks. Otherwise, you pay again.
yeah,
It's a re-envisioning of education in a lot of ways. Yeah,
yeah.
Hey,
it is.
Mike, can you unpack a little bit CBE and AIs like peanut butter and jelly? I stood up at a faculty meeting and said the only antidote to the negative aspects of AI is to shift to CBE. Now, I don't know exactly what I would meant when I said that, but it sounded good in the moment. And now I've been asked to define that and create a whole program. I'm like, oh crap, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, yeah,
But but I'm
yeah,
wondering when you say, just unpack that a little bit.
yeah, sure. So just to be clear for everyone. So traditionally, like, we all know what traditional is. Like you have, like, say all of us are in the same Bio 101 class right now, and it's 15 weeks. And and we have to go all endure 15 weeks. And at the end of 15 weeks, a third of us will get an A, a third of us will get a B or C, and a third of us will flunk out of this class. That's the traditional model. They say it's the constant is the time, but the outcome, the grades is the variable.
Mhm.
CBE flips that, meaning the outcome is the same, meaning all of us, let's say we're in Bio 101, but it's a CBE course. All of us will pass this course. That's the constant. The variable is some of us, a third of us will pass this class in 5 weeks, a third of us will pass in 10 weeks, and a third of us will pass in 15 weeks. So you're now kind of the variable is about time, how long it takes someone to pass the class. So there's no longer a question like, are we going to am I going to pass the course? And it ensures kind of higher, it's actually a better educational model anyway. So that's sort of the fundamentals difference between CBE and traditional. However, CBE can be done in different ways. So we at IWU, we actually don't even do this 15 weeks. We have 6 8 week, I'm sorry, 6 8, no, 8 6 week terms. Every 6 weeks is a new term for us. Imagine that. Every 6 week is like we just have 6 weeks and then the term's over. 6 weeks and the term's over. And you can imagine, I mean, it's intense because students usually only take 1 or 2 classes at most because you're packing 15 weeks into 6 weeks and you're still having and so that's our traditional models is the 8 6 week term. What we're doing is we're using the same container in that 6 week term, and the difference now with the CBE is, let's say we're all in the 6 week course right now, Bio 101 6 week course. By the end of maybe week 2 or 3, because I've worked in the lab and I have some experience, and so Bio 101, just give me the final. And like after 3 weeks of this, I just like, I want to do the final right now. And then if I pass the final, I get the credit and I'm done. And I get like basically I wait till the next 6 week term to open up to do the next, but I'm essentially done for that. And so that's kind of how I think with the AI piece. Let me weave that in. I think AI is where similar to IXL. I mean, we haven't worked this piece out because this is the complication about higher ed is we don't have the same standards that's mapped out like K-12. Like, K-12 has everything down to the dot. And all you have to do is program it against it, and then you get this beautiful thing like IXL. But higher ed is not like that. And your GE is not like one GE in one university is not the exact same GE in the next. And so it's not really translatable or interoperable. And so we have had to with the AI, we really use AI really as a way for the students to practice their knowledge. And then when they're ready, I mean, we have the course set up, but the AI helps them to practice. Now, more quizzes, like they can generate as many quizzes as they want in the course or whatever. And as they do that, they get more practice to get better. And once they get to a point where they feel like they've been, they're competent or they've mastered the content, then it's just a matter of that exam. Because CBE at the end of the day is it all pins down to that assessment. Like, can you demonstrate mastery of that material? And if you can, like you get the credit and you move on. And so for us, the AI is essentially a tutor on the side that helps the student get as much practice, ask as many questions, and when they're ready, then they take the assessment and then they get. So does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, that makes sense. Using AI is that it's more than efficacy, it's that confidence. I am ready to demonstrate that I've got this, but I've had because I've put the reps in. I've done, and AI has given me some formative feedback on the steps towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
You know what I find fascinating about these talks is that everybody uses AI in such different ways.
Hmm.
And that's what's fascinating about it. That's what makes these talks. I listened to the number one and number two. I believe this is number three.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so it's
it
fascinating how everybody's been using it in different ways. And
it
someone
really is too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
someone
Can
said
I? Yeah. Go ahead.
someone said that the only way to truly understand how to use or utilize or leverage AI is to play around with it
Mhm.
to see what it can do.
Has anyone in this group employed the use of AI to help with PLAR and prior learning experience to, as students, because we're dealing with degree completion programs, so we're trying to understand what practical or academic experience can be brought in that can count towards credits. And we know that those processes are very painstaking and rather expensive. I'm wondering if anyone's looked at AI around prior learning assessments. Because if you haven't, I'd love to be in conversation with you because that's my next to-do list.
Is it, Greg? Is that something that we've explored or looked at, or even if have we talked about that using AI in that corner of our world?
No, I don't know that we have, but I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
I know many other institutions are doing similar things where they're just using AI as a tool in order to just cut all the overhead. Think of all the staffing that goes into PLA and whatnot. And so I think that's a great idea.
How would you use AI for that, for PLA?
Well, that's why I don't know. I don't know if it's quite an idea yet, but part of PLA is to be able to put together some portfolio, some evidentiary warrant of experiences that are mapped on to what either that organization or that institution has decreed as being standard for that credit. And then typically that means it has to go to that academic area. Some faculty member has to be hired. Then they have to spend a period of time assessing what you've done over against criteria. Well, it seems to me that if we have some AI assisted evaluation and we know what those standards are, it may be and help us assist, and better yet, it may help that learner who is putting together a portfolio to apply to a program put together a better package. Now, that's a lot of highfalutin talk. Exactly how that works, that's what we need to spend some time figuring out.
You're right, though, Scott. Um, Absolutely. There are AI tools that could make it so
Yeah.
much easier and quicker for us
Yeah.
to assess what students have accomplished
Mhm.
rather than waiting for a human to look through all that and do it all. What if we could just do that quickly, get
In
back to students
seconds.
quickly? When I think of prior learning assessment, I think of all the time it takes and how long
Right.
students are waiting. We could eliminate so much of that if we could use AI. So I love the idea.
And the reason why we're waiting, for the most part, at least at a place like Trinity Western, we're relying on already overworked, overtaxed faculty and paying them overloads to do it. And
Yep.
it's not their priority. And They eventually get around to it, but it's not. Or you have to have a team that's dedicated to just that, and that's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting use case though. I love that.
Um,
Yeah.
and just kind of a point on that, Amy here, I actually just finished doing research for one of my classes on um, AI, ethical use of AI, and they did have in Europe, in England, I believe, a situation where they tried to use AI to assess the state testing scores, and the results were actually heavily biased
Yeah.
because the AI, the way it was written, actually took into account like the students' addresses and the neighborhoods that they were from and scored them lower based on
Mm.
where they were at. So just as that conversation's coming about, I would encourage anyone pursuing that to keep that in mind when writing, when having AI written for assessment purposes of students, is the biases that may be inherent in the data that we're giving the AI.
Yeah, I think great point, Amy. We've got to be careful on what we give the AI. I think, with the rubric, in my experience, if I use a real clear rubric and I
Yes,
just
that's
upload the assignments,
yes.
that works. But the other thing that Amy's bringing up, which is a great point, is that AI is pulling from a lot of different places and it's not always even accurate or correct. And so again, it really is kind of a delicate dance, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
And I
That's
think,
what makes
oh, go for it.
that's what makes Google AI Notebook so interesting, or even Nectar, because you can vet what it is that the AI is trained on. It's just like what someone said, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
And when Scott was talking about prior learning assessment, what went through my head was, oh, one could put in a rubric, one could somehow have something like Nectar where you have vetted material there, and then you have a standardized rubric that's not biased, and then you do your data analysis of, that could work. That's what went through my head when he was talking about his. Of course, I could have been wrong. I'm just a
Yeah.
novice in all of
Yeah.
this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally does. Yeah, and I think what we're all saying is that AI can't be fully trusted yet, right? It's a great companion, and we're seeing in the industry we're moving toward AI agents, where it's actually taking action on behalf of a person or a group. But that's going to be used in select areas where there's already a high level of trust in the output of that tool. So math is a great example, right? English may not be. Um, but we are
Oh,
at time here, so I want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time and just thank you all for taking the time to show up. For those of you that thought, oh, this was interesting, or I wish there was somebody that would have been a part of this, please invite them next time. We need some naysayers in here. I would love to hear the other
oh
side
my
of the
God.
fence,
You don't
right?
mind what she has to say. No, you
I
don't
would
mind.
love it. It would be great. We would have a fun, enriched conversation.
Uh,
So
she would yell at you. No, I don't think so.
that's
I
okay.
know
That's okay.
somebody like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of the week.
You
Yeah.
too.
God
All right.
bless.
Adios.